everyone. Thanks for coming today. My name is Kathleen. I'm from the National Geographic Education Foundation, and I'm so thrilled to be here. I think that I got the most interesting panel because I have folks who are right on the front lines, both of STEM work and of classroom work. So the people who are really deeply involved in the classroom teaching and learning that we're most interested in every day. And so I'm so excited that we get to kick this whole event off with teachers and students and scientists. With me are Alice Bowman, who's the New Horizons Mission Operations Manager. She's led the team that you just saw on screen that sent New Horizons to Pluto and brought us all those fantastic photos earlier this summer. So congratulations. Samantha Garcia, who's in 6th grade at the Bezos Public Charter School here in DC. Vanessa Ford, a teacher at Maury Elementary School who manages their think tank STEM education program and who was Samantha's teacher last year. And Mark Hofer, who's a senior advisor to the Bezos Family Foundation, a former teacher and aerospace engineer himself, who now works with leadership initiatives and STEM education policy. So we're very excited to have all of them here today. I'd like to kick us off with a question for Vanessa. Teaching is the critical point, I think, for all of us in this room to get all of the policies, all of the work that we do actually into classrooms and into the hands of students every day. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about your think tank program.
Sure.
What your goals are for students and how it gets them engaged in STEM.
So I'm an elementary teacher here in DC Public Schools, and here elementary starts at preschool 3. Preschool is in elementary, so I teach 3-year-olds through 5th grade. And my school community, my principal who is here, parents, there's a few scientist parents here as well, all came together to really support this STEM program at my school. And essentially what I do is I create a classroom space that focuses on not only science content, but really the other aspects of STEM, those practices, the engineering practices, problem solving, and other 21st century skills that are not necessarily that easy to teach out of a textbook. Collaboration is critical, problem solving, thinking outside the box. And so my space is really a safe space to make mistakes, to try things out. And it looks very different depending on whether I have 3-year-olds in the morning or 5th grade in the afternoon. And it's really a phenomenal. I've been teaching 14 years, and for the last 5 leading this program, and I would say it's the happiest I've ever been in my career because there's really space to allow kids to truly enjoy and explore in a way they may not get in a regular classroom.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Samantha, you were in her class, so what was that like?
I think that she was one of the best science teachers that I've had. It was really easy to learn. It was very hands-on. It was really fun. So yeah.
So this amazing hands-on fun experience that has inspired Samantha in Vanessa's classroom. And what I'd love to make the connection to now is the work that you do every day, Alice. When you hear about these kinds of classrooms and experiences, how is that connected to your work and the kinds of skills that you need every day as a program manager?
Yeah, so first I'd like to thank Vanessa for all of her wonderful work that she's doing with the students. Because without that, we aren't not inspiring the students. So we want to, Samantha was saying, that hands-on. I think that's the key right there, is to give children the chance to really experience what it's like in the real world, what it's like to do what I do or anybody else in a STEM field. For me, when I was growing up, I grew up in the era with Apollo astronauts, and they were in the news every single day, so I only had to turn on the news and be inspired by what they were doing. And then the sci-fi pictures, shows took off, and it was very inspiring, and I had the support of my family. No one ever told me that I couldn't do anything that I wanted to do. So I think this really played into what I eventually ended up doing in my work, my career.
Yeah. So Vanessa, one of the things that you mentioned was the need for a safe space for students where they can try and fail. Can you tell a little bit more about how you make students feel safe? to be able to take those risks and try new things?
Well, I think that's something elementary teachers try to do really well. Part of that is setting up a classroom community, planning lessons and units that allow for mistakes and then allow for that improvement stage. So you're not just doing an activity once, you're doing it, you're going back, you're seeing if it worked. If it didn't work, you have time to actually figure out what didn't work, you talk to your partners about it, and then from there, you get to go back and improve. So really incorporating that engineer design process and then bringing in real engineers who say, this is a process, we work together. And then we even have a job in the classroom called collaboration conductor. They keep harmony at the group. And so instead of coming to me when there's a conflict, when you're trying to build one model, there are students who we are working to train, so to speak, to be those mediators and use the correct language to work together, because we see that as a central skill to any science and engineering career.
Yeah. And Alice, you were nodding during a lot of that.
Yes, it was definitely a huge team effort, and that's what made it all possible. It was all of us coming together, working for a common goal. Just like Vanessa was saying, you know, we do make mistakes, and we correct those mistakes so the next time we do it better. And so that is the real world. Mm-hmm. And that's great. You're teaching it to your students.
Yeah. So all of you are mentioning a lot of skills that students need that aren't sort of hard science content. So you haven't talked about how important it is yet that they know physics or that they know, you know, the size of an atom. You're talking about collaboration and problem solving and failure and working together. And I know that at the Bezos Family Foundation, you focus both on the cognitive and sociocultural skills about all of those non-cognitive things. So I wonder if you could speak to the work of the foundation and why both of those things are important, and where you think it's working and where you think it's not working in U.S. STEM education.
Sure. Yeah, having been on both sides of the coin, I've been in the classroom, been a high school science teacher for a decade, and then went into industry. And one of the things, it's really fun, as the educator in me just, you know, is shouting inside when I hear somebody who's doing something extraordinary in the classroom, and people who haven't been in the classroom are actually taught what she does is extraordinary. And the fun part is listening to somebody in industry who gets to receive the benefits of extraordinary teachers. And you know, when Samantha's ready, she's ready to be hired. I have an extraordinary opportunity in my job in that I get to look for those people doing extraordinary things in the classroom. And one of the things that we continuously focus on and we identify are that, yeah, STEM and STEAM are very important things, and we need to identify those things that are going to help students be successful in the future. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we have to make sure we don't lose sight of are those collaboration skills, those soft skills, the things that are, as you mentioned, the hardest to teach, and they're the hardest to set up. In the classroom, those things are every bit as important, making a safe environment where students are allowed to fail and recognize that that's just a step to success. Yeah. Those are the things that we really are trying to focus on at the foundation, are identifying those people and those support systems that allow them to do what they're doing so extraordinary already.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask just one or two more questions, and then I'm going to go out to the audience to ask questions. So start thinking about what you would like to ask our panelists, because I'll come back and forth to the audience throughout. So just give me one more question, and then it's your turn. Mark and Vanessa, you're both teachers, and you've been there 14 years, and you're both talking about the hardest thing to teach is these soft skills. So do you feel like you had the support to learn how to do that, either in your teacher prep program or through some other support system in your career? Or how did you develop those skills as a teacher to do this really hard work?
Well, I hear that, and I hear what you said, I just said, but then I also think as an elementary teacher, sometimes the hardest thing to teach is also content. So it's double at the elementary level. Sometimes the hardest thing to teach are those soft skills, because you really need to develop a classroom culture. You really need to have wonderful routines and procedures to ensure that blocks make it where they need to make it and things don't explode all over the place. But at the same time, I think what's really critical, and I don't want this to be lost in our soft skills conversation, is the need for really great professional development for elementary teachers around content. Elementary teachers are wonderful at making very creative, unique learning experiences, but sometimes feel dissuaded because the content seems inaccessible. It may not be their background. And so I think in terms of teacher training, having both the classroom management component, which really brings in those soft skills, which allows you to get to those soft skills, in collaboration with that content could be really critical for elementary folks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark.
No, we're actually working with Arizona State University, who is developing a program that is exactly that. They're helping middle school teachers to identify those areas and help them with the science, the content, and become extraordinary providers of science content in the classroom and providing that kind of support. And it's one of the things that we identify that teachers, colleges, they have a limited amount of time to prep teachers for the classroom, and that's one of the things that falls by the wayside. And addressing the soft skills, no. My first degree was in psychology, and that's by far, when I got to the classroom, that even after a master's in teaching, it was by far the most important part that I took into the classroom.
So Samantha, from your perspective, did you know when you were in her classroom that you were being taught collaboration and problem solving and trial and error, or were you more focused on learning the science?
Well, I think that it was somewhat half and half.
Yeah.
I was aware that I was being taught how to collaborate with others, and I was also being taught skills with STEM. But it wasn't really like the stuff that they force into you. It was kind of like,
it sounds like it was fun.
Yeah, it was more fun. Right now, middle school is like way different from.
Yeah, how is it different?
It's like the time, like we have class, then we have like a long class period, and then we have passing periods, long class period.
Yeah.
And then like just today, I was carrying like all my books for the first part of class.
Yep.
It's like, I need to stop by my locker now. And like the classes, some of them, depending on the teacher, like some of them like feed it to you a little bit slower than others, and then other ones are like, take notes here so that you can go back on it and look at your notes to learn it.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of different teachers to work with now, a lot more complex schedule. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to see if we have any questions to see what the crowd is thinking about right now and what you'd like to ask our panelists. I think there are microphone runners. And I see one over here to my right.
Hi, everybody. My name's Anthony. Vanessa, right?
Yes.
I think you started to talk about space. Oh. And initially I was thinking that you were going to talk about that in an abstract way, but it sounds like you were talking about it in a very physical way, right? I'm an architect, so I'm curious about what it is about the space that helped or didn't help, and was the design of the school, could it have helped, could it have improved your opportunities for doing these kinds of hands-on learning that you want to provide to the students?
So ironic that you asked that, because we're in the middle of a physical space issue. Our elementary school is overcrowded, and my principal has made a point that I will have a physical space for students. And this year, my space is about a third the size of my space last year. So we have a shed for curriculum and IKEA cubes around the outside, and it's very tight. And it's a constant discussion because we're slated for a renovation. And so we've just started having those conversations about what that space could look like. I have a colleague in Maryland who has a wall that's all snap circuits containers, and a wall that's Velcro for ramps, and a wall that is Legos. And so the idea that you can take something and have a physical space that supports inquiry is really critical. And I'd love to talk about your ideas after, because maybe we can use them. But space is difficult, and I cried last year when I lost my space, but this new one has become a new learning space for kids. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here in the middle.
Thanks. My name is Peter Gutmacher, and I work at a place called the DC Trust for Youth. And I have a question for you, Mark. So obviously, STEM exploration takes place in a number of different kinds of arenas. The classroom is one of them, but it also takes place after school, in museums, different arenas that young people. In your travels, have you seen partnerships between the school day and out of school time be very effective, and what's that look like?
You bet. The fun part about, one of the fun parts about my job is I get to look at things that aren't necessarily traditional classroom education, and those support systems that might help provide a space, or they might provide materials. And some of the things that we've seen that are extraordinary in providing that support where it's not necessarily during the classroom day. Museums in New York City, the museum works with libraries and classrooms, and they build kind of a collaborative effort, and that's available to students in many, many different ways. So those towns and those cities that leverage the extraordinary opportunity that they've got outside the school walls, there are many, and they are generally in larger cities that have that kind of opportunity. But if you look in your own cities, you'll find that those are available to students and teachers. And we try to find those situations where opportunities are not only forward-looking, but also trying to support students and teachers at the same time. They're out there.
Well, while you find the next person, I want to add to that that's a huge part of my program at Maury, are those partnerships. Mm-hmm. And in DC, and I believe there's like a crew here, the DC STEM Network is a group of teachers and professionals and organizations. And so a lot of our most successful programs at Maury, I may facilitate as the teacher, but they're outside organizations coming in with programs and materials to work with us. And any, at least at the elementary level, STEM program would certainly not be complete without those partners working with us.
Yeah. So these are really great points about partnerships and outside scientists coming in to support and to help. And so, Samantha, I understand you want to be an astronaut or an architect, and that just last weekend you got to meet Buzz Aldrin when he was at the National Book Fair, and now you're sitting right next to a woman who just sent a spacecraft to Pluto. So I wonder if you have any questions for Alice.
I'd like to know, how long have you been wanting to launch a mission to Pluto, and how long did it take for you to get that organized and happening?
So that's a great question. I'll say that I've been interested in space exploration since I was a little kid, probably since I was 4 years old. I can't say it was my only interest. I did a number of things. But in 2001 timeframe, we got the chance to partner with a principal investigator. His name is Alan Stern, and this was to send a mission to Pluto. It had been denied many times prior to that because, you know, funding is a big issue when you send a mission out into space. So it was a long and hard road. We did launch that spacecraft in 2006, and then it was another very, very long cruise out to Pluto, 9.5 years. So that's how long it would take. But I'd also like to add that we were talking about partnerships. Many industries, Applied Physics Lab included, have programs that involve high school and college students. And there are a huge amount of programs that we have at the Applied Physics Laboratory. So there's many opportunities. I think it's just a question of learning about those and being close to a place that offers that. And this is where students can come in and get that real-world experience and see the collaboration that goes on between the engineers and the scientists to make something like this happen. So,
Well, hopefully we can find a way to get Samantha involved in this program.
I think we can.
Pretty soon, pretty soon. I see another question. I see one here in the middle, table 16, maybe?
Thank you. My name is Akua. I'm from Wolf Trap Foundation for the Performing Arts. And I appreciate, Mr. Hoffman, that you spoke about STEAM, the fact that the A is either in or connected in some way, that you acknowledge it. Ms. Vanessa, I would like to know, you also talked about your children having role play, more or less, and responsibility in the class. Can you describe other ways that you have connected conscientiously the arts in the relationship of STEM learning?
Sure. I, first of all, am very lucky to have incredible colleagues. And the art teacher at our school is a phenomenal art teacher, visual arts, and she teaches a lot of content through the arts. And so I often defer to her expertise in creating STEM-based STEAM lessons. But for me, we move away, at least to add the A, from just drawing and diagramming and thinking about things. Sometimes we view them as sculpture or the processes, and sometimes it's professional. And me speaking with our visual arts teacher and noting that the practices that are in the next gen science standards that I'm implementing are very similar to the visual arts practices that she has, and looking at how she's using pieces of art to do a close viewing and pull out evidence for your statement about your beliefs for it, and how I can do the same thing with an article or with an experiment or an engineering design. So I'm still in the infancy of ensuring that I bring more of the A in, but I'm lucky to have a good model and colleagues, and that's the other thing. And if you don't have it as a teacher, you can find it from somebody who does, and being open to not knowing and finding people who can help support it. Yeah, for our kids.
Yeah, it sounds like you have fantastic
I hope that helps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to take one more question from the audience, and then I'm going to let each of you give us sort of a final thought, because our time is almost up. Over here. Yeah.
Hi, hello. Hi, Michael Weinraub, Public Consulting Group. I just want to piggyback on the last speaker. Obviously, there's an upside to the creation, if you will, of the term STEM and even STEAM. But there's a downside, or at least a tension, because when you try to focus on so much, it's possible that you actually effectuate or do very little. So I'd be interested to hear panelists speak about how those tensions have been realized in your experience, and what you've done to address them.
You want to take this?
Sure. I'm a glassblower, and as a scientist, I see the embodiment of science in a physical object when you make it. It's probably my best crossover between science and art for me personally. And MIT has a glassblowing studio, and it's one of its most popular classes on campus. And you know, a school that's notoriously known as a science school. It's one of the most you know, recognized opportunities that the school provides. One of the things with art, I don't think I could teach physics anymore without a piano in the room, because I think if you don't at least pay acknowledgement and respect to how much they are the same, you're doing a disrespect to both science and disrespect to art. So those opportunities, whenever you find a teacher who is willing to open their mind and say, I'm looking for opportunities to incorporate critical thinking, science, everything. Yes, you can say that it distracts from maybe the point or the primary focus, but you also enrich it, and it soaks in for many different students if you enrich it with the arts and with science and cross-cultural.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So the next couple of panels are going to be folks who are administrators and policymakers in STEM, who are the ones who are establishing these big policies that will impact all of you on the front lines as teachers and students and as practitioners of STEM as you start to bring more people into your lab. So I'd like to give you each sort of a chance to give a final word of advice to those people who will be on the stage later. What do you want them to know from your perspective as a STEM professional, as a student, as a teacher, as a former teacher and STEM professional and now philanthropist.
Yeah, so I think that educating our young people is something that we all need to do, not just the educators. They're the ones on the front line. They have to abide by all the rules and regulations. But it's really for us also, and we need to find ways in the work that we do. I mean, everybody can do it. We need to find ways to reach out to the students, to the school systems, and make ourselves available to have them us be part of their education.
Thank you. Samantha?
I completely agree. I think that everyone should educate the younger people that are younger than themselves. And I also think that they shouldn't educate them in a way that they won't remember it. So still, still in a way that they're not going to think that it's super easy and then not pay attention, but not in a way that it's not pushed into them or put too complex for them to understand, so that it's easier to learn.
Yeah, so it needs to be challenging, and engaging, and get kids really excited about it so they don't forget about it when the test is done, but it's something they take with them.
Yes.
I would say that would play into the policy aspect on two levels. One would be teacher ed programs, ensuring that teachers are prepared to do that for kids like Samantha and every other kid. Teaching them how not to cram it down and not to make it too easy, but to really blend on and make it engaging and exciting. And that's a difficult balance. Yeah. And then the second thing would be my plug for elementary science. Fund us. Yeah. And keep us around, and then train us really well so that we can provide training to our own classroom spaces so you don't need us. So ultimately, it's great that my school has me because I have a space where they can come, not me, but my role. But wouldn't it be wonderful if all of the classrooms had the time and funding and training to do what I do so that I wouldn't be needed?
Yep. It would need to be a
space.
pull-out special
exactly.
class.
So
part of everything.
Pull out. And so train teachers and fun teachers. Not hard.
I tell them we know how to educate kids. We have brain science that supports it. We know how to do it. What I would urge them to do is look for those opportunities in their positions to find the way to financially support those teachers like Vanessa and those students like Samantha, to provide them the opportunities to do what we know how to do. And unfortunately, we have a teacher who's in a confined space. Imagine if she had a larger space. So why don't we provide that? That's what I'd urge them.
Fantastic. Well, thank all of you so much for being here today. It's been fantastic to hear all of your perspectives.